Welcome everyone to a new episode of the FinOps Weekly Podcast, and today we have a FinOps legend with us. We have Ben de Mora. How are you, Ben?
A legend. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right, man. Good to catch up.
Yeah, good to catch up. We were discussing like how to present Ben because he has a lot of experience. He have seen it of all colors, as we say here in Spain. In FinOps, and we are going to talk about multiple topics, especially regarding the data and making FinOps actionable these days. So I'm going to start with maybe a tough question that you have mentioned. We were discussing like data in FinOps is not the solution that you think it is. So maybe you can clarify the audience what do you mean by that, and where you have seen this fail in FinOps.
Yeah, so a good way to think about data in FinOps is the foundations of a building. Okay, if your foundations are poor, your building will not stand for very long. It will not look very good. It will probably fall apart, right? But if you pour the best foundations in the world and stop there, you don't have a building. You've just got some flat, very solid, flat ground. It's great. You can go do stuff with it, but there's nothing standing on it yet, right? So you need data. Data is critical, and it must be accurate and trustworthy and clear and current as per the principle of FinOps, right? It needs to be accessible, timely, and accurate and relevant. But that's not enough. And a lot of people think that it is enough to make it happen. You show somebody the world that they need to see, and suddenly they will somehow just take action and do the right things, right? But actually, it's not the case. What you need is context, and you need understanding, and you need sort of the reasons behind the data, which often isn't there, right? You're never ever in a million years going to get context from your cloud bill. It's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
You need the business context of why things are where they are. Maybe things aren't optimal, but maybe there's a reason for that you don't know, right? Maybe focusing on optimizing something or trying to reduce waste on something actually might hurt you in the short term at that particular point in time. So understanding the context behind the data is really important. And then beyond that, understanding like, okay, who owns this data? What does good look like? Right, what does bad look like? If I see my data, what is an acceptable threshold for what this should be looking like? Because numbers on their own they tell some of the story, but you need a lot more than that. So kind of that's what I mean. I think people over rotate. I mean, okay, maybe they don't over rotate because data is a challenging space, right? It's hard to get right. But a lot of people spend so much focus on that they forget what it's for, and they don't start to actually have the context and the sort of bigger business conversation around it.
Yeah, that's true. That's something that we of course discussed with Frank when we had this the podcast with him about the context, the importance of the business strategy and how it makes sense. But
now that's a FinOps legend right there.
Yeah, that's also another FinOps legend.
He deserves that title more than I do.
I don't recall how I present him, but I definitely I don't recall.
The red glasses of FinOps.
Yeah, he's a legend. But I wanted to also so as mentioned, we discussed about it. Like numbers on their own don't mean anything. It could be apples, or it could be cloud cost, whatever. But they need to build the business context. And apart from the business context, what do you think it also helps solve the problem in FinOps? Do you think there is another missing piece about FinOps that we are seeing apart from this context?
Yeah, so as kind of go back to my rubbish analogy about it being foundations for a building. What's missing is the organizational structure, right? A lot of the time, and I don't mean a FinOps team. That's kind of a solved thing now. We know what a FinOps team looks like, what it should be doing, all that kind of stuff. I mean the wider structure. I mean, how do we create ownership? And what does ownership mean, right? Because you need to provide data for ownership, but you also need to provide autonomy, and you need to provide engagement and what's in it for them, why do they care, right? And often people outside of finance or whatever don't really care about saving money, right? So what do they care about? Figure out how to sort of attach to that. So what solves the problem is attaching not just the business context but the human context as well, right? So how do you get people engaged? And there will be different things that can be used for that conversation, right? Could be, do you want a bonus, right? here's a KPI. Hit this KPI, and you get, I don't know, a steak dinner or something, whatever it is. Um, so, like, how do you incentivize things? How do you create clarity and ownership around these things? How do you give people the safety to understand the information and go, hey, do you know what? I know the context of this engineering environment, and I know that I can actually do this thing over here, right? How do you give them the time in their sprint for that and prioritize that kind of work as well? So, state of FinOps data that we saw recently kind of reiterates that and shows that autonomy is still a challenge. Executive sponsorship is still a challenge. Creating the space in the project plans for not just building and deploying and shipping, but actually improving the efficiency and recognizing the value of it, right? So, what's the missing piece? Context and ownership, and just supporting the understanding that we're trying to drive value, not save money. The different things.
That's for that. Well, that's the. I think that's one of the basic points, and also, try to give people like guidelines. So okay, like, so I remember when I started in FinOps, like one of the topics was like, engineering is not doing anything, blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
and I was like, what are the guidelines that they have? Like they have help, they have
Yeah.
what they need to do. Is this a KPI that you are measuring? Are you doing
Yeah.
something for incentivizing that? If the
Exactly.
answer is no.
And and also, right, like before I worked in FinOps, I was an engineer. I was a data center engineer for 5 years, and prior to that, like operating systems engineering for Solaris and Linux and everything else. And I've run teams, and I've not known a single engineering team in my entire career that isn't up to its eyeballs in workload. Right? Like every engineering team I've ever worked with has been like, okay, your capacity is this. You're going to do this, right? So it's not that they're not taking action. It's like, okay, well, but what are we giving them to do? And how are we ranking those tasks in order of priority? What's the backlog look like? Because I guarantee you that if you balance that well, and you balance what the engineering groups and the other departments, procurement, product, everybody else, right? If you balance out what their expectations are, and you say, right, I want you to build everything yesterday, or I want you to build it, but I want you to build it sensibly and conscientiously. I want you to do it with an eye to green ops. I want you to build it with an eye to maximizing flexibility and elasticity. It depends on what people are prioritized to do is what they will do, because otherwise, if they don't do what they're told, they don't have a job, right? That's how that works. So, they're going to do what they're asked. So what are we asking them to do? That's important.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned before that you need to make FinOps relevant for someone that is, the job is not saving money, and we're talking about engineers, but there are other people involved, such as product. And so how do we make it, apart from a steak dinner that you mentioned, how we make it work for them?
I mean, I'm easy. I'll do anything for a steak dinner.
Me too.
Yeah, right. So anyway, how do you make it relevant? So that comes down to what does their world look like? What are they trying to achieve in their profession, in their job, right? Because FinOps, one of the reasons I find this such an interesting and fascinating discipline is that it's so broad, and it sort of reaches into so many different specializations. You learn so much. I've been doing this now for what, 7, nearly 8 years, really, if you count the time I was doing this at Oracle. And I'm still learning things. I'm still learning things about different parts of the organization, the way they operate, what they do, and what they need. So find out what they want. Find out what they want to achieve. Don't make it about FinOps. Make it about them. What are you trying to get done? What's difficult in your world, right? What did you wish you could know about this really crazy, mad thing called cloud that nobody really understands except the engineers? they don't understand it either a lot of the time, really. Let's be honest. Nobody really it reaches a level of complexity, it just melts the brain. But like, what are they trying to achieve, and what would help them,
Yeah,
right? What insights are useful to them?
you always need to be like I think it's emphatic in English. Like you need to be
Yeah,
position yourself in the
empathetic. I think is empathetic.
empathetic. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
My native English is
yeah.
not there.
Neither's
But
mine.
so, but you need to make it, think about the other person and try to play around and
Yeah,
what they care about, because it's like if you are always talking about, what you want, it's like that's fine. But the other person will say, yeah, that's not what I want, that's what you want. So
yeah.
why I have to do
It's
it,
the
right?
so what factor, right? What's
Yeah,
in it for me? What do I care? You know.
yeah.
I think that's really important. That's a really important thing to be able to dig into. Is like, um, whenever I'm speaking to somebody and I'm trying to get FinOps in place and like helping people to develop the practice and establish the connections, I don't start by telling them what I need them to do. In fact, usually I don't tell them what I need them to do at all. I usually begin by saying, okay, well, what does your world look like? What do you struggle with every day? Um, and what sorts of things are you busy doing? And what would make that easier?
Mhm.
That's it. Simple conversation, right? And if it's and that sort of begins a whole load of they actually then they care. Then they'll spend half an hour explaining to you what their day job is like, what they do, what winds them up, and if you get onto something that really winds them up, probably have a decent cup of coffee because they'll be there a while. But like find out from people what it is that they wish they had, because again, going back to the fact that FinOps are so interconnected and so broad, chances are what they wish they had exists somewhere else in the business and is actually something that the FinOps team can conduit as part of the improved context that we work with, that we flow through, and that we help them to develop. So I'll give you a for instance, right? Speaking to a finance team, and they're like, "Man, I wish I could figure out why the bill is so completely unpredictable every single month." I go to the engineering teams, and I ask them what they're going to spend, and they don't know, or I ask them what they're going to go do, and they're like, "Hey, here's a really complicated product plan or project plan that I don't understand because it includes really useful phrases like kinesis fire hose, right, and elastic beanstalk." I'm a finance person, I don't know what that means. Help me out here, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you can sit down and go, okay, well, look, this service is used for this, and it usually behaves like this if it's working properly. So, based upon that context, and you can have this conversation. You don't need to to turn them into an engineer, but like, find out what it is that drives them crazy. Right? Engineering teams, they're like, we've got so much work to do, and we're being told to save money. Like, what money, right? You want me to do all of this stuff and build all of these things yesterday because we've got aggressive business plans, we've got a competitive marketplace for our product, and we have to ship. We have to ship it. That's successful businesses ship. That's the way it goes. So I've got all this drive and demand from the organization to do stuff, and now you're saying to me save money, or reduce costs. I'm like, okay, great, but like how? Where? And also, you're telling me to save costs. This thing is idle for a reason. Don't touch it. It's part of a SAP cluster, or it is an
Yeah.
active passive failover architecture, whatever. Yeah. So you need to try to help these people to understand how the wider picture can help, right? Because historically, people have just basically sort of done their job with their blinkers on. They've kind of existed within their world, right? And done a lot of belly button staring and just basically done their job. And now, cloud kind of forces you to step out of that
Mhm.
because of how quickly things evolve and change. You can't hide behind the delay of 6 months to get a server and another 2 months to get it racked if you're working with somebody like I used to be at the data center. I shouldn't have said that, but but like it's like if you're working with something that happens at the speed of cloud, at the speed of decision making, which is a phrase I've stolen from somebody else who used it recently. Um, you can't hide behind slow cycles anymore, and you have to be able to collaborate and work together. It's the oldest principle in the foundation. Is like you have to collaborate. It's one of the oldest principles. So yeah, how do you get people to go beyond their job and care? Well, don't get them to go beyond their job. Find out about what their job needs, what they need, what they're struggling with as a result of the emergence of this thing, and not really emergence. This macroscopic growth of cloud, which is causing an enormous amount of friction wherever it starts to grow. That seems to be the one universal truth, actually. It does seem to cause friction wherever it starts to grow exponentially in any organization. It makes things harder. And I think
Yeah.
the reason it makes things harder is because people don't talk to each other enough beyond the boundaries of their disciplines. And they
Yeah.
don't listen, they don't understand each other's situations. So the FinOps team has a mandate, unlike any other, to go everywhere and ask these questions and understand what makes things hard now, what is difficult. And going to somebody saying, I need X, Y, Z from you, give it to me in 2 weeks. Then you're not going to get it.
So
Right?
especially if you are not the ones measuring their performance, or if they are not the ones.
Yeah, you're not their boss.
Yeah,
So
if
you've
you are
got
not their
power.
boss, they say yeah, why?
You're like, yeah,
So in that, like, so we discuss a lot about the being able to talk. You need to talk to each other. I think that happens especially
mm,
because it grows bigger. Normally means that the company is bigger, and that communication sometimes in
yeah,
large corporates, it's difficult. Like, it's not that accessible. Knowledge sharing, all of that is
yeah,
fairly difficult, right? And communicating the business strategy, and everyone is aligned on I don't know, a 200,000 people company is not easy, right? You need to align a lot of
yeah,
people.
yeah. And business strategy can sometimes be a bit of a problem too, right? FinOps is an interesting one because it operates both at the very, very detailed level, right? We're talking
Mhm.
about individual line items in the cloud bill,
Yeah.
single VMs, right? Single idle disks, all this kind of thing. Super, super detailed, second by second events and that kind of thing. But it also operates at at the board level. It operates at the stakeholder, the shareholder level, the public company filing level, right? It affects everything all the way up to the direction of the business. If your organization is a heavily cloud aligned or heavily linked to cloud spending, and that's where you derive your value, then your strategy should not only be informed by FinOps, but it should be shaped by it, right? You should be shaping your strategy as a result of understanding what the heat map of spend versus value looks like, right? What areas of your cloud are earning you money? What areas are wasting you money? What areas are necessary in order for your organization to exist and therefore indirectly earning you money, right? But understanding that at a strategic level, and also understanding, like, if you make business mandates about what your product is going to do, what your service is going to do, and you don't do that with an awareness of the way that cloud behaves or the way that your business interacts with itself around those decisions, that strategy is going to struggle. And I'll give you a for instance, right? Let's say, for example, um, your product is super bursty, super, like,
Yeah.
very, very high load and then nothing, and high load, and the scale is very rapid, right? Very, very hard to architect something that can elastically scale that fast, um, unless you're starting to use something like serverless, yeah.
Mhm.
But then, so okay, maybe you recognize that, maybe you understand that actually that's your strategy. You're going to say, right, we only use serverless here. We don't use any static resource. We only spin it up when we need it. Everything is serverless. Cool, right? And then you come out with a new product. And your new product isn't bursty. Your new product is like a huge batch process work, right? And your new product actually behaves in a very, very different way. But the strategy, it's cloud native. It's all, like, serverless and that sort of thing. So, fun fact for you, if you were to take, I think this is still correct, if you were to take an AWS Lambda function with a certain amount of resource,
Mhm.
and you were to take an EC2 instance with roughly the same amount of resource available to it, and you run them full tilt 100% non-stop full parallel, the Lambda function will cost you 16 times more money,
That's a lot
right?
of difference,
Yeah.
right?
You know what I mean? So like that's a dent. You know, it's not a small thing. So strategy needs to continually listen to the heartbeat of what FinOps is saying and what FinOps is giving you in terms of like, look, this is what we're doing, this is what we could be doing. Are we still going in the right direction? Right? And I think that strategy historically has been a very long term, outlooky kind of thing. And it should probably not be because um, those sort of slow cycles, the long burn cycles of strategic direction, don't really vibe very well with the rapid changing nature of not only cloud but also everything associated with it, the flexing customer demand, all that kind of stuff. So strategy really should be really shaped by what FinOps is identifying, finding out, not just in terms of the way that the cloud providers are changing and evolving. Also, I'm gonna invoke the dreaded phrase AI or acronym, whatever. We managed to make it 20 minutes into this conversation before anybody mentioned that, and
Yeah.
it's my fault, and I brought it up, and I hate talking about it. But like, um, everybody's AI strategy right now seems to be turn it all on and see what it does, right? Um, and
And spend a lot of money in the way.
spend a lot of money, right? And there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of feedback going into, hey, so you know how we turned all this stuff on and people are using it like crazy and they don't really know how to write prompts, so they're doing a really bad job of it and burning through loads of tokens and everything's going terribly wrong. And we've chosen the wrong models and they're really inaccurate and that doesn't help us, whatever, right? Um, yeah, being able to sort of react and flex to that and understand the changing and evolve. People are making 3-year, 5-year commitments to AI providers already,
Yeah.
and they've been using the providers for like 6 months or
Yeah.
less. Right? It blows my mind. Anyway,
Yeah.
the business
It's crazy.
strategy needs to sort of really be much more in step with what the cloud FinOps team is telling them. And often that isn't the case at the moment. A lot of the time, I'm seeing FinOps teams kind of at the level of the engineering department, right? And they're kind of like they're quite low down in the order of things, and their voices are just not reaching the altitudes they need to reach in some cases. When they do, things are really good. When they actually reach the altitudes they need to reach, and not just the data and the sort of dry graphs that have been copy pasted out of insert cloud cost management platform here web page and stuck on a PowerPoint, and like that sits there for a month while people talk about it. Not like that, right? But actually being a live part of the conversation when people are having strategic conversations.
Yeah, that's true. And you also need like it's difficult to to push it forward, but maybe
Mm,
for helping FinOps people like push it forward. What do you think like FinOps in a more strategic way looks like compared to like the you know right sizing or cost cutting that we are maybe engineers are more used to, like they are
mm,
and they pretty understand like to adapt the resource, but they are not, that message is not going to be transmitted upwards because the
mm.
upward people are not going to understand it. What's your recommendation in that term?
Yeah, so cost cutting, waste reduction, whatever it is, right? This is housekeeping.
Yep.
Okay, you're either good at it or you're not. You know what I mean? I'm good at it sometimes, right? I make sure the background of my camera looks good, but but you know what I mean. So it's basically it's housekeeping, right? It's keeping things tidy. That's just being a good citizen, right? Um, but also, if you over rotate on focusing on cost cutting, you'll do massive damage to your organization because a business is three. I talk about this a lot. A business is three things, and I've stolen this from a Harvard professor who did a talk on this. It's three things: money in, money out, what's left over. Okay.
Yeah.
A strategy needs to encompass that, and any FinOps conversation needs to encompass all three of those things at all times, right? One of the things that we do when we talk about FinOps is we talk about these mini business cases. We've been talking about these for years, right? And what should be in a mini business case isn't we will save X by doing Y. That's not what should be there. What should be there is, okay, so we've identified an opportunity that potentially could reduce our waste. Potentially, could be waste, might not be. We could reduce our spending by X, right? By taking actions Y and Z. The cost of taking actions Y and Z is this, right? I ran out of letters. And that cost could be borne over a period of however long. Our break-even point is this. Our risk of not succeeding is that, right? We need these resources. The potential opportunity cost for diverting resources away from what they were doing is this, that, and the other. So in terms of like bringing it all together, it isn't about just sort of feeding up cost cutting and saying, yeah, we turned off all these VMs and reduced our spend and yada yada. I mean, one of the other things I say far too much is like, look, I tell you what, I'll make your cloud spend zero real fast. If that's all you care about, all you worry about is what's on the bell, yeah. I can fix that for you dead easy. That's not a problem, right? Unless you've committed to an amount of spend with your cloud provider over a few years, in which case you're paying it anyway. Sorry. But like, you know, focusing on, okay, well, but what are we getting for our money? And are we able to understand if a optimization step is necessary? Yeah.
True. And wanted to add, like, when you were discussing, like, the whole, like, the step by step about, you know, you start from there, this is the opportunity, and this is the real cost. Sometimes that, especially people maybe that are not, let's say, from the finance or from the business perspective, but I don't say that they work on that, but they do have some background. I tell because of this story, like, if you are probably investing in companies, in individual companies, you probably watch or read the reports, and then you probably see things like, you know, net margin, more of a financial thing, like you see net margin, operating margin, cost of goods sold, blah blah blah. It all goes down to that in business. Like, it's fairly simple. Like,
it is. It's all about margin.
Yeah. It's all about the, like, why are some business are called better than others? Because, for example, a business like Visa has margins that you know, are over 50% because their business model is just, you know, it's a great business model. But if you are talking to Walmart, they need to have like a business model that it needs to be huge because their margin is going to be 5%, and it's going to not to be more than that because then other chain will be better than them. So you need to, like, independently of the level that you are, like in your career, if you are a junior or if you are, you know, more senior, you need to understand that, because that's what business is about. And that's the good thing about FinOps, and that's one of the things that kind of, you know, made me go all into it, is because that much, like, it goes to the business level, and as much IT or cloud cost you have in the business, the more important is going to be FinOps. So this is going to be embedded into the root of the business, and it's not going to be going away. So that's when I understood, and that's something that I tried to transmit everyone. It's like, think about, if you were reading the, you know, the results of your company, I recommend you to everyone to take a look at that, even though the first time you read those, you won't understand nothing. You can ask your Gemini to explain it to you.
If you work for a publicly filed company, you should know what your company's balance sheet looks like.
You need to understand
if nothing else, right? You should know where you work is a healthy business. You know what I mean? Because if it's super unhealthy, we've seen. I mean, it breaks my heart. We've seen some businesses close their doors not long ago that were working in FinOps that were not that you know, didn't succeed, and it's really sad. Friends of mine were affected, and like, you should know what your balance sheet looks like. Yeah, and if your organization is like hugely invested in cloud, um, then FinOps is probably one of the most important parts of that balance sheet, right? FinOps is going to have more impact on that balance sheet potentially than anything else, other than market forces for your product, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's something that I try to, we need to try and make people understand. And, now with especially
Yeah.
the good, um, let's say the forbidden word AI, it could
Uh,
really help you. That's a
yeah,
good, really good use of AI, like understanding the
it
balance sheet. And it's
is.
like, okay, explain to me. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Actually, it is quite useful. I've done that myself. Is like taking, and I'll admit to this, right? Like, I'll take some company's huge balance sheet that just is full of stuff, and I'll drop it into some AI vendor, right? And won't name one. Um, and I'll be like, it's public knowledge anyway, right? So that it's not like you're
Yeah.
giving it, it's publicly filed data. Don't ever put anything private into AI ever. Don't do it.
Yep.
Even if they say they're not going to train on it, don't do it. Um, but yeah, like the you just put the balance sheet in and say, tell me about this company. How's it going? Right? Like, how are we doing? And maybe even a couple of balance sheets. You go and get the last 5 years of filings and say, there's the last
What's the
filings
evolution? Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
right
It's
Acme. How's it going? Right? Um, and is this a good place to be? And all that kind of stuff. Should I invest or not? Don't ever ask that question. But
no.
like, is this a is this a healthy company? Is a
Yeah.
fundamental question.
Yes.
And going back to the kind of point of that, um, in quite a lot of balance sheets now, you're starting to see cloud being broken out as a separate spend item
Mm-hmm.
in their balance sheet, right? And if we take the view that, like, on average, I think there's still today about 30% of cloud spend is waste. Still
Yeah.
today, which is just blows my mind because that's not far off of what it was in 2019. Right? So I'm like, I view that as being the fact that not that FinOps is failing, but that more and more people are building into cloud and they're starting their journey. I spoke to somebody 6 months ago who was starting their journey in cloud, and they just discovered the FinOps Foundation because they'd never needed to look before.
Yeah.
Right?
Basically, that's
So,
it. There is a lot of evolution in the ecosystem, and we always think like it's been there forever, and everyone is in
mm,
the cloud, and blah blah blah. Whenever you have an IT cost, and it's like, especially, there are new companies, there are new ways of doing business, and there is
mm,
all good brick and mortar business. Maybe they
yeah,
now need cloud because whatever business reason or whatever
they've
pivot,
got their
but
DC renewal quote through the door, and after they pick them up off the floor, and they've had a brandy and recovered from seeing the price change, and they're like, wow, uh, okay, all
yeah, we
that
need
tech
to.
I haven't refreshed for 7 years, I need to do something about this.
Definitely, definitely. So, wanted to, apart from all this business, and we talked about the strategic and how to incentivize people. So, apart from
Yeah.
all we have discussed about the data and being how we can make FinOps more actionable for people. So,
Mm,
like if they are someone that is struggling to make adoption, what's the first thing that you will tell
mm.
people to do differently that they are doing?
So, I'm one of these people who believe deeply in the fact that this practice is extremely important, valuable, and makes sense. And I understand. I won't say I understand it because I don't think anybody fully does. But like, I recognize its value.
Yeah,
Okay, I don't need to be sold to. However, I mean, in terms of like convincing this is a good idea, but there are people out there who have many people in organizations who've never heard of it before or peripherally heard of it. It's not their job. They don't know about it. It sounds like something complicated and technical, not my problem, or financial, not my problem. Um, so I think one of the most underrepresented parts of any FinOps team is marketing and internal marketing, right? And something that marketing people do very, very well. I have friends who do this very, very well. Is they simplify the complicated, right? Some of them maybe simplify a bit too much, but I won't start. But yeah, like you have to simplify it. You have to translate it to make it relevant. Going back to what we were saying before, like, so what? What's in it for them? Why do they care? Okay. If you can figure that out for your business holistically, if you can figure that out by department, then you can start to tailor your messaging, your outreach, so that it isn't, this is FinOps and we need XYZ and we are going to do blah. No one cares, right? Few people do. But like, how do you connect with your organization? How do you connect with your people and understand why they should care, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell them why they should care. Ask them why they should care, right? And ask them what matters to them. So the first thing, so I've seen a lot of practices with great data, with really good reporting, really good tools, right? Like Gartner top right quadrant, best in class solutions in place. It's all good, works perfectly. They've got exquisite graphs and dashboards with really great information, really actionable, really good. And yet no one does anything. And they are constantly going and banging on doors and shouting from the rooftops, like, look at the graphs. And you go look at the login stats for their solution, and there's like 3 people have looked at it twice last month, and no one cares, right? And it's because we suffer from the assumption that because we think it's important, everybody does, and
Yep.
they just don't. I promise you, they don't.
They have
So
way more for them. They have way more important things in their plate than FinOps, right?
they have a job to do that isn't FinOps, funnily enough. So like, what's the first thing you do differently if the data's great and the reporting is great and you're getting no traction? They don't care. Why don't they care? Don't ask them why they don't care about FinOps, because they don't care. They just won't. So how do you make it relevant to them?
Mhm.
What problems can you solve that they have? And as soon as they start to realize that they can come to you and get value from you as a practice, as a FinOps practice, and actually they get not just value, but they get a conduit to the rest of the business. Their problems are no longer just their problems. You can support them with connections and with that fabric of context across the whole organization. And then you'll have a job keeping them away from your door because it'll be busy, right?
Yeah.
But which is what we want, right? We want lots of people knocking on the door and asking to talk to us and engaging with us. That's what we want. It's brilliant. But you have to find out why they care, and then appeal to that. And your marketing team does that like breathing. That's what marketing is, right? Is find out why they care. So if you don't have a marketing person on your FinOps team or working closely with it, and you're struggling to gain traction, that might be why.
Yeah.
So, be friends with your marketing people. They're usually lovely people.
I wouldn't have thought that we could bring like to that point that we need marketing people
Internally.
in the FinOps team.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Like I've actually seen a FinOps practice that had somebody who they were like dotted line from the marketing team, like internal marketing team, large organization. And the comms were amazing. The comms were great. And as a result, people were engaged, right?
Yeah.
It actually worked really well. Even to the extent that I think they were actually the marketing person was actually involved in refining the report visibility so that it was more engaging to read, and like added extra stuff in it, just not just graphs and tables. It was useful. So there was some context in there, but the comms were brilliant. So if your data's good and your engagement sucks, your comms are probably the problem.
That's a wonderful. I think that's a wonderful advice, and with that, I think it's a great way to finish the chat today. Thanks, Ben, for your knowledge. It's always a pleasure to have a chat with you, and thanks for taking the time today.
Amazing. Well, it's always lovely to catch up with you, Victor. It's nice to see you. Let's make it not too long next time, man.
Yeah, for sure. Let's hopefully see each other soon, and if it could be on site and meet each other, would be amazing, man.
I will be in London for FinOps X London on the 24th of March. So if you're about, let's get a coffee. And if
Yep.
anybody
Yeah,
else is
for sure.
about in the future, say hi.
Definitely. So, and to everyone that are watching today, I see you in the next episode. Bye bye.